Hello students, this is Dr. Faizan Mirza. I'm discussing with you the details of the light-dependent reaction. The light-dependent reaction occurs on the thylakoid membrane. We already have discussed this in detail. What I'm drawing here, I'm describing you the process which include non-cyclic photophosphorylation and cyclic photophosphorylation. I'll be discussing Z scheme with you. I will be discussing what actually photophosphorylation is, and this all occurs in the light-dependent stage of photosynthesis. This arrow here, it represents increasing energy level. If it represents an increasing energy level, we know that if this is the tail of the arrow, it means it's low energy, this is high energy, this is higher at the top of the arrow where the head of the arrow points, this is the highest amount of energy. So this arrow actually tells you the increasing energy level. This PS2 I'm showing you, you can just place it here. You can see that PS2, the photosystem 2, is having this much amount of energy, which is at the lower end of the energy spectrum. So when light energy falls on PS2 is having chlorophyll A, the magnesium will lose its 2 electrons, and the 2 electrons, they go to a higher energy. These 2 electrons go at a higher energy. I'm drawing these 2 electrons from photosystem 2 as blue in color. So keep in mind that the photosystem 2 is losing the 2 electrons because they got excited. This is photoactivation of the chlorophyll A molecule. The light energy fell on the photosystem and it got funneled by all the accessory pigments, and eventually chlorophyll A allowed 2 electrons in its outermost shell to get ejected out and go to a higher energy. You can see that the 2 electrons, these blue in color, they are going to a higher energy and they eventually reach a very high energy level. At the same time, water, which is having this amount of energy, it undergoes photolysis. When water undergoes photolysis, it ends up producing 2H plus ion, 2 electron, and half oxygen. I'm representing the 2 electrons which are coming from the photolysis of water as dark blue in color, and these 2 electrons will fall into PS2. PS2, which initially had a positive 2 charge, since its 2 electrons had gone out, will receive the replacement electrons from photolysis of water. So photolysis of water occurs at photosystem 2 because there is an enzyme present here that allow 2 electrons that allow water molecule to get split, and as a result 2 electrons fall into PS2, relieving the PS2 of its positive charge. Light energy of 680 nanometer wavelength is used here. What about photosystem 1? Photosystem 1 is at a higher energy level as compared to photosystem 2, and this photosystem 1 also absorbs light energy, but the light energy it absorbs is of 700 nanometer. So when light energy falls off 700 nanometer on photosystem 1, the magnesium in its reaction center in the chlorophyll A molecule excites its 2 electrons, and the 2 electrons go to a higher energy as well. The same thing that happened here. So this is again the photoactivation of photosystem. Now this also got you can see this particular photosystem. It also got a +2 charge. So this +2 charge allows this to stay positive 2 for some time, but soon it receives the replacement electrons from PS2. The replacement electrons are coming from PS2 and they fall into PS1. When they fall into PS1, they relieve PS1 of its +2 charge. As the electrons are moving from a high energy and dropping down to PS1 at a lower energy, these 2 electrons, which initially belong to PS2, these electrons are losing energy. They move along the series of electron carriers, and as they move along the series of electron carriers, they lose energy, and that energy is used to carry out chemiosmosis, and by chemiosmosis on the thylakoid membrane, ATP is produced. So this ATP is produced as well. So yes, chloroplast, cytoplasm, and mitochondria are the 3 regions in a cell where ATP is produced. So yeah, these 2 electrons which actually belong to PS1, they are still going at a higher energy level. These 2 electrons will fall into the stroma where you have NADP. So this NADP will allow the 2H plus ions to get, so the 2 electrons which are here to get added, and the 2H plus ion that initially belong to water splitting, they also get added to NADP. So NADP gets reduced in stroma. So overall picture is that when photoactivation occurs on PS2 and PS1 in this Z scheme, this is represented by non-cyclic photophosphorylation. This black arrow, the black lines here represent non-cyclic photophosphorylation. What's happening here? PS2 lost its electron, they went to a higher energy. The electrons of PS1 also went to a higher energy. Both these photosystems received a +2 charge. Photosystem 2 was relieved of its charge because water photolysis occurred, and the electrons from the photolysis of water, they fell into PS2, relieving it of its charge. PS1 lost its 2 electron, then they went to an even higher energy, and this gets the electron replacement electron from PS2, and as the electrons are falling they lose energy, and when they lose energy ATP is produced by chemiosmosis. The electrons of PS1 are the ones which actually end up with NADP, and NADP gets reduced. So this entire is called Z scheme. This is called non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Together with non-cyclic photophosphorylation, there is a chain of electron carriers that allow cyclic photophosphorylation to occur as well. What's cyclic photophosphorylation? Cyclic photophosphorylation occurs on PS1 only, where the two electrons of PS1 can fall back in PS1 without going to NADP. So the two electrons that went from PS1, they would just fall back in PS1, and when they are falling back in PS1, they would lose energy, and again ATP will be produced. So in non-cyclic photophosphorylation, yes, ATP is produced, but NADP is not reduced. Whereas if in cyclic photophosphorylation, yes. So I'll just repeat this once again. In cyclic photophosphorylation, which I am representing with this red triangle here, in cyclic photophosphorylation, PS1 is involved. And when PS1 is involved in cyclic photophosphorylation, we see that ATP is produced because the electrons do lose energy, but since the electrons never go to NADP, so NADP is not reduced. But what about non-cyclic photophosphorylation? Non-cyclic photophosphorylation makes use of both the photosystems, PS2 as well as PS1. In this, yes, ATP is produced because the electrons do lose energy, as they were losing energy in cyclic photophosphorylation as well. So ATP is a common compound which is produced in both. But yes, oxygen is produced as well, which is occurring on PS2, so that's a part of non-cyclic photophosphorylation only. And NADP gets reduced as well, that's again a part of the non-cyclic photophosphorylation only. Why is cyclic photophosphorylation important? The cyclic photophosphorylation occurs when carbon dioxide concentration decreases and Calvin cycle stops. Reduced NADP is not oxidized to NADP and unable to accept H+ from the photolysis of water. I already discussed with you previously that regeneration of NADP or reduced NADP turning into oxidized NADP is very required. So I discussed this with you in the previous video that NADP is reduced in the light dependent stage. The reduced NADP comes into stroma. It's in the stroma, yes. So it's in the stroma. Its reducing power is used. It gets oxidized, and this NADP. The reducing power is then transferred and converts carbon dioxide into triose phosphate through a series of chemical reactions, enzymatically controlled chemical reactions, and this oxidizes NADP back. So the NADP is again available for accepting more hydrogens and electrons from the next photolysis of water. So this cycle of reduced NADP and oxidized NADP is mandatory to is actually dependent on Calvin cycle. So if Calvin cycle will stop, if the cell is not receiving if the plant is not receiving a lot of carbon dioxide, for example, if the stoma is not really opened, or it's not allowing a lot of fresh carbon dioxide to enter into the leaf, so this Calvin cycle will start to slow down. When it starts to slow down, the reduced NADP cannot be turned into oxidized NADP anymore, and it can just go back to the light dependent stage to get reduced once again. As a result, non-cyclic photophosphorylation will keep on occurring, cyclic photophosphorylation will keep on occurring at the same time, and as cyclic photophosphorylation keep occurring, it will keep on producing ATP, although reduced NADP, and oxygen will not be produced. This is what I need to cover here with you in the light dependent reaction. So if we just place the light dependent reaction here on the thylakoid membrane, and we see how the light dependent reaction occurs in photophosphorylation. So this thylakoid membrane is a phosphorylated bilayer, and these are photosystems shown to you, and these are electron carriers. This is a photosystem, and this is a photosystem as well, and these two are electron carriers, and this is ATP synthase. This is the thylakoid membrane, this is a stroma, and above the thylakoid membrane is the thylakoid space. Already discussed with you this ATP synthase, electron carriers, PS2 and PS1. PS2 absorb light energy, and this light energy comes on PS2, it excites its two electrons and also allow water to undergo photolysis. The two electrons move from PS2 and it receives the replacement electron from water because water splitting enzyme is present here. So yes, water gets split. The water gets split not in the thylakoid lumen but at the stroma. So yes, water gets split here. So yes, water is split and oxygen enters in the stroma, and I have just mentioned it here, but actually it's occurring in the stroma. So yes, oxygen is produced here, and from PS2 the magnesium, the two electrons will get then passed on to a series of electron carriers, and they lose energy. And as they lose energy, H+ ions will be pushed into the thylakoid lumen. So the two electrons, they keep on moving, they keep on losing energy. And PS1 also it loses its two electrons, and they fall into the stroma. And when they fall into the stroma, we know that they will be added to NADP. So yes, H+ they go out into the thylakoid space again in a high concentration. This is very similar to what happens in the intermembrane and the crystal of the mitochondria. The thylakoid space allow the H+ ion from high concentration to move to the stroma, to the low H plus ion concentration through the ATP synthase, and this occurs. This is where chemiosmosis occurs, and this is exactly where the ATP is produced in cyclic and non-cyclic photophosphorylation. If it's just cyclic or if it's non-cyclic, so we already have covered that. In cyclic photosphorylation, which is represented by this arrow, only ATP will be produced, but in non-cyclic photosphorylation, oxygen will be produced, ATP will be produced, and reduced NAD will be produced as well. So that's it from my side. Thank you so much.